Welcome to Hamburgers and Horror, the home of meat, monsters, and a masked killer roaming around the school. I'm Noah Hook, and today we're looking at 1980's Prom Night. Prom Night follows a group of high school seniors, all of whom were involved in the death of a young girl as children, as they are stalked by an unknown entity. It all comes to a head on Prom Night, as the cops trail the killer and the teens start getting hacked up. Prom Night was directed by Paul Lynch, who has also directed Humongous, RoboCop 4, and a lot of different TV shows. This was one of his earliest films, and he developed the idea after meeting with Irwin Yablans, who had produced Halloween 2 years prior. Yablans suggested that he think of a holiday or special occasion to make the theme for his movie, and he ended up landing on Prom Night. The central premise and motive for the killer were written by a film student at USC, Robert Guza Jr., who went on to write for a lot of TV series. Writer William Gray combined these two ideas to create the screenplay that became Prom Night. The film had trouble getting financial backing until the manager of Jamie Lee fucking Curtis reached out to Lynch. Lynch was obviously ecstatic to have Curtis and was really impressed with her ability and preparedness on set. This was one of the 3 slasher films she appeared in between Halloween 1 and 2, the other 2 being The Fog and Terror Train. The other big name in the movie is Leslie Nielsen, in one of his last serious roles before diving headfirst into comedy. The rest of the cast is relatively unknown, most of them being local theater students and recent graduates from the local Canadian area. The crew also consisted of many local film school graduates. Prom Night was filmed in Toronto over 24 days. Art director Ruben Fried got permission to utilize a local high school and an abandoned jail to shoot in, which are the 2 most frequent settings in the film. While Lynch kept the gore to a minimum to avoid being overly gratuitous, the effects we do see were done by Alan Cotter and Warren Keeler, who worked on The Brood and Jason X respectively. The disco-heavy soundtrack and score were composed by Paul Zaza and Carl Zittrer. Lynch reached out to Zittrer after being impressed by his compositions for Black Christmas. Prom Night had a limited theater release, but after proving to be a sleeper hit, it ended up having a larger staggered release throughout the US and Canada. It topped its $1.5 million budget with around $15 at the box office and gained a lot more during home video release. It was met with many negative reviews from critics who considered it to be a watered-down mix between Halloween and Carrie, although most did appreciate that women were not more explicitly targeted than men and that the gore was kept to a minimum. Its standings have gotten a little bit better through the decades, with a 50 and 35% on Rotten Tomatoes. Its naysayers usually point to the slower pace and the lack of mystery within the film, while supporters enjoy Curtis's and Nielsen's performances and its disco setting. But Prom Night does have a bit of a cult following, and it managed to rack up 3 sequels and a remake. It is also considered to be one of the most influential slashers, as 1980 was still early in the golden age and it helped cement the rules for the genre. So it sounds like we're in for a bit of a mixed bag here, so why don't we go check it out for ourselves? Hope y'all have someone to dance with, cause it's time to watch Prom Night. The film opens on an abandoned convent where 11-year-olds Wendy, Jude, Kelly, and Nick are playing a demented version of hide and seek. Wendy is it.
The killer is coming. The killer's gonna get you.
And the children run through the building searching for a hiding spot. 3 siblings, 11-year-old Kim and 10-year-olds Robin and Alex, notice Nick climbing on the roof. Kim forgot a school book and heads back to get it, and Alex tells Robin these kids don't want to play with her, but she heads inside regardless and clumsily searches the building, while Wendy finds Jude and Kelly. Robin finds Nick and she blows his location. Knowing he's lost, he too becomes a killer, and the 4 of them start chasing Robin while yelling kill, kill, kill. They close in and push her around and chase her over toward a window. The terrified girl climbs onto the ledge and falls back through the window onto another window on the ground, killing her. Nick wants to get help, but Wendy says they'll all go to jail, so they have to keep quiet. The other children swear to never speak of this and head home. Too bad they don't realize somebody was watching. Robin's father, Mr. Hammond, is looking at the crime scene as some weird internal dialogue tells us the police have arrested a suspect. He tends to his grieving wife as Kim and Alex watch their sister be carried away. We jump to 6 years later where the Hammonds are visiting Robin's grave. Mrs. Hammond still hasn't gotten over the death, but Kim and Alex have something bigger to worry about, finding dates to the prom. She tries to set him up with Jude, who she is now friends with, but he is in charge of the sound system and doesn't have time to dance. Kim, Alex, and Mr. Hammond, who is the high school principal, arrive at school, and Kim expresses her concern about the creepy custodian, Mr. Sykes. Do I smell a red herring? A heavy-breathing, pencil-tapping POV calls Jude, telling her he'll see her at prom. She heads to school, but is pulled up on by Seymour Crane, aka Slick, who offers to give her a lift. And who could say no to Slick? Now it's Kelly's turn for a call. She gets startled by her boyfriend Drew, who is a bit of a douchebag. Now it's Nick's turn for a call, but he and his father, Lieutenant McBride, head out and discuss a love triangle he's in between Kim and Wendy. As McBride looks over a file, we learn that a sex offender named Leonard Murch was suspected of Robin's death, and when the police tried to question him, he ran and got into a car accident. He was severely burned and convicted of the crime. Murch has escaped his mental hospital in Cleveland, taking a nurse and her car with him. He asks his previous doctor if he thinks Murch would return, but the doctor has no idea. He gets a call on the phone as the police have found the body of the nurse in town. Finally, Wendy gets a call, and she believes the caller is high school bonehead Lou, and she skirts off to school. We meet Lou as he sucks on his cigarette and harasses his female peers, and we also learn Slick and Jude are going to the prom together. That was quick. Kim also sees Wendy kissing Nick as Wendy refuses to accept they are broken up, but Kim isn't too pissed about it. McBride and Dr. Fairchild arrive at the abandoned convent where the nurse's body was found. They have an APB out for Murch and the stolen car, and the doctor suspects he is out for revenge on the whole town for what happened to him. Fairchild suggests they keep quiet about Murch so as not to create a panic, as he can't simply walk down the street without being noticed, and McBride agrees. Meanwhile, prom queen Kim is practicing her dance moves until jealous-ass Wendy interrupts. She says she and Nick may be prom king and queen, but he belongs to her. They have a little back and forth, and Wendy tells her to wait and see who he goes home with. Now the caller is ripping out Kelly, Jude, Nick, and Wendy's faces from the yearbook. Kim, Jude, and their friend Vicky say hi to Slick, and a masked Lou harasses Kim and forcibly kisses her. Alex jumps in and takes down two of Lou's buddies before taking a kidney shot. Teachers break them up, and the two are brought to the principal's office. Nick breaks up with Wendy for good, and apparently her only other option is Lou. Mr. Hammond takes Lou's masks and suspends him indefinitely, admitting he is taking his son's side and personally dislikes Lou. We get more internal dialogue as McBride ponders Murch's motive and where he could be hiding. Nick and Kim are walking at some scenic cliff, and she talks about how hard this day is for her family. Nick tells her he loves her and she reciprocates. That was really quick. He flashes back to Robin's death and almost tells her about what happened. Luckily, the bell rings, interrupting what would have gone very poorly. Wendy treats Lou to some free burgers. That's my kind of currency. And we learn he's helping her enact some sort of revenge on the Hammond family. After tennis practice, Vicky flashes Mr. Sykes, and we get more red herring activity. Kelly expresses her nervousness about going all the way with Drew, and Kim suggests she find someone who will wait until she's comfortable. Wendy finds her yearbook photo taped into her locker room locker, but she just thinks her friend or Kim did it. Jude and Kim are the last ones in the locker room, and they hear a bunch of glass breaking, finding one of the mirrors smashed up. They search for the culprit and notice a shard of glass has been taken. Kim runs by Mr. Sykes, but my boy is just fixing an exit sign. Kim and Nick are rehearsing their opening ceremony, and Alex is standing in for their dad. Wendy and Lou watch, but nothing really happens here. Kim walks the empty halls and gets creeped out, and Jude finds her yearbook photo and a piece of mirror in her locker. Kelly has one too. Now there are constant patrols looking for Murch, especially around the high school. Mrs. Hammond can't find her lipstick, and she and Mr. Hammond head to the school. While Kim gets ready, somebody watches from the shadows. Alex and Kim have some banter as he helps her get ready, and he lets Nick inside. Nick, who can't stop staring at Robin's photo, and Kim head to prom. Lou and his goons pick up Wendy, and they also head to prom. Alright, we made it to prom. The known characters all arrive, and McBride is hanging around, I guess. Kim and her dad dance, that is until Wendy and Lou make their entrance. Kim grabs Nick, Alex throws on the movie's catchy disco theme song, and they proceed to perform a 3.5-minute dance sequence. as the rest of the school looks on and eventually joins in. Still no updates on Merch, Kelly is still nervous to go all the way, and Wendy ditches Lou. Kelly and Drew are suddenly in a locker room making out, and when he gets more handsy, she stops him. He keeps pressuring her, but she continues to refuse. Drew mocks her and leaves to find someone who will have coitus with him. Kelly cries and gets dressed, not realizing there is someone behind her. In blurry slow motion, the killer grabs her from behind and slits her throat with the glass shard from earlier. We join Jude and Slick, who both just lost their virginity. Slick crushed his glasses, and while the killer watches him take a leak, Jude suggests they do it on the cliff next to the school. Dang, y'all just finished. Attaboy, Seymour. The killer watches them kiss, but snaps a branch that spooks Slick back into the van. Slick whips out his informative joint stash as the killer circles the van. Jude jokes that she'll remember this night for the rest of her life, and the killer promptly opens the van door and stabs her to death. Slick punches him and tries to run him over, but the killer hops inside and wrestles around with him, all while the van is still driving and spinning. The killer hops out just in time as Slick drives off the cliff and fucking explodes. R.I.P. Slick. Wendy asks an unseen figure for some mascara, but all the killer has to offer is turning the lights off. He swings the axe at her, but she avoids it and flees, with the killer not far after. For some reason, all of the exits are chained shut, and Wendy dodges another axe swing. She runs through the gym, up some stairs, and into a science classroom. The killer searches the room, but her childhood hide-and-seek skills pay off, and she goes unnoticed. She slips into a connected room and knocks over an anatomical model, getting the killer's attention though. The chase continues back downstairs and into an automotive shop class, and Wendy hides inside a car. The killer enters the shop and obviously finds her. He smashes the window and Wendy is able to knock him down with a broom, and the fucking chase continues. Oh look, another locked door. Better hide inside this dead-end closet. The killer is lurking outside, and it isn't until Kelly's body falls from its hiding spot that Wendy flees right into the killer, and he finally puts her down. That was literally an 8-minute chase sequence. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Do-Nothing finds out the cops have captured Merch 50 miles away, meaning he isn't our teen killer. And he doesn't know about any of the other deaths, so he's happy as a clam. But he does arrest Mr. Sykes for being drunk, so to nobody's surprise, he isn't the killer either. Who could it be? It's time for the King and Queen procession, and it's time for Lou to do whatever he has been planning this whole movie, which I think was to steal the crowns from Nick and Kim so he and Wendy would be king and queen. But since Wendy is missing, he's content being king with Kim, I guess? Nick is alone backstage and the killer finally comes after him. But Lou's goons beat him to it and tie and gag him, stealing his prom king crown. But King Lou's reign is short-lived as the killer creeps up behind him. The dancing stops and everyone prepares to watch the procession. But all they get is Lou's severed head, which rolls out onto the catwalk. This causes a panic at the disco, and everybody flees the gym. The killer also cut a wire or something, so he got zapped. Kim finds Nick and frees him, but the killer awakes and confronts them before they can exit. He tries to chop Nick, but he flips him away and avoids several axe swings. The three of them wrestle, and Kim eventually gets the axe and she smacks the killer in the face with it. It's here that Kim and the killer make eye contact and she realizes who it is. The killer flees outside with Kim right behind him, and the cops roll up as memories of Robin's death and the chanting kids play back. The killer collapses and Kim holds him, removing his mask to reveal Alex. We see that he was the one who saw his twin sister's death, and he screams Robin's name. He dies in Kim's arms and she cries over her second dead sibling. And that's Prom Night. I have mixed feelings about it at the moment. It's definitely a movie with pros and cons. It's not the super typical slasher film I thought it would be. It has a lot of the typical tropes, but it has a lot of pretty noticeable differences as well. Alex doesn't actually kill anyone until an hour into the movie, but once he starts, it kind of just goes from kill to kill to kill, and I appreciate the patience of that, and it's fun having just back-to-back-to-back kill setups, but it does leave the ending feeling a bit rushed. It was also a mixed bag suspense-wise. I think some deaths had great suspense building up to them, which was more emphasized than the kill itself. but some dragged on just a little too long. I'm specifically talking about Jude and Slick, and especially Wendy. That off-screen weak-ass axe chop was so anticlimactic after watching 8 minutes of her being chased, but I did think most of the kills were pretty good. The sound design in Kelly's death was solid, Jude's had some comedic value, Slick's was over the top but a decent explosion, but the best kill is definitely Lou. It's also interesting that our quote-unquote final girl was never in any real danger. Alex never planned on hurting her, which brings me to my last notable distinction for Prom Night. Alex is one of the first slasher villains to be portrayed as sympathetic. Friday the 13th and Terror Train also had killers seeking revenge in 1980, both with pretty compelling motives, but I'd say Alex acting less like a lunatic during his screen time helped us feel more for him by the end. Although I don't know why he has some sort of Smeagol voice when he kills, or why he's wearing his mom's lipstick. So Prom Night is definitely important in that it helped open the door for later semi-sympathetic slashers like Axel Palmer, Cropsy, and Candyman. While it certainly borrows from previous films like Black Christmas, it is still one of the founding slashers from a time when the rules weren't totally set and self-aware. There isn't any winking at the camera, the movie plays it completely straight. It also unabashedly loves disco, which is a scene later slasher victims typically aren't so fond of. Prom Night is a perfect representation of the time in which it came out, which is definitely important to consider when watching it. I can't honestly say it was a scary film, or that it really succeeds in the mystery part. I knew Alex was the killer the moment I saw him in the intro, and all the time with McBride hunting for merch and the Mr. Sykes red herring thing kind of just felt like wasted time. Aside from Curtis and Nielsen, the acting is fine at best, and the contrast between regular Alex and killer Alex is a bit much, and there's no real explanation as to why he snapped then. I guess just because Lynch wanted to make a prom-themed movie. All in all, I'd say Prom Night is worth the watch, if for nothing else for its historical importance to the genre. I don't think it holds up as well as Black Christmas or Halloween or many of its early slasher counterparts, but I do think it has a unique outlook for the time. It doesn't revel in the gore, it takes time to let its characters be fleshed out, and of course, Jamie Lee Curtis does a great job. I enjoyed it a lot more during my second watch through, and I have a feeling it will grow on me further in the future. Well, that's about it. Next week we'll be looking at a movie I've never seen before, and it stars Lindsay Lohan. We'll be checking out 2007's I Know Who Killed Me. Thank you all for joining me, and an extra thank you to my patrons. As always, I'm Noah Hook, and this has been Hamburgers and Horror. Stay safe out there. Thanks for watching my review of Prom Night. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe so you can keep up with my weekly horror reviews. And if you want to help support the channel further, be sure to check out my Patreon account. You'll be able to vote for movies and franchises that I'll cover next. Thanks, y'all.